guys, welcome back and welcome to another missing true crime video. So today we're going to be talking about a very old case of Joanne Ratcliffe and Kirste Gordon. Now this case has been linked to the Beaumont children case. You may have heard of it. There's heaps of videos on YouTube about that case. I'll link some down below in case you're not familiar with it. But this case is very similar, but it does not have half the amount of coverage that the Beaumont children have. It's a very, I guess this case leaves me gives me the chills. It's very haunting, very frustrating and very baffling. So let's get straight into the video. So we're heading back 45 years ago to Adelaide, South Australia, and it was August 25th of 1973. 4-year-old Kirste Gordon, born in 1969, was attending a football match, or a footy match as we call it here. I think it was a Australian rules football game. I know nothing about sports, between Norwood and North Adelaide. She was in the company of her grandmother while her parents were visiting friends in Riverland, which is a region of South Australia. So 11-year-old Joanne Ratcliffe was also attending the football match that day with her family, with her father Les and her mother Kathleen Ratcliffe and a family friend named Frank. There was around 50,000 people attending the footy match that day, which I guess isn't very unusual for a football match, especially during football season here in Australia. People go mad for it. So there is conflicting reports as to whether Kirsty and Joanne's family knew each other. Some reports say they didn't know each other, and others say they were both season ticket holders, so they saw each other every week at the footy match. I'm more inclined to believe that they knew each other at least through the football because of the following information. During the footy match, Kirsty's grandmother and Joanne's parents had allowed them to go to the toilet together. Doesn't seem like a big deal, except for the fact when you think about the fact they're 11 and 4 years old and it's a crowd of 50,000 people. So this was probably quite a big deal to them and to their families. They went to the toilet together, came back, and all was well. But half an hour later, 4-year-old Kirsty needed to go to the toilet again. So Joanne either offered to take her or Kirsty's grandmother asked Joanne to take her. There is conflicting reports, but either way, half an hour later, Joanne was taking Kirsty to the toilets again. And I think if these families had not known each other, then they wouldn't have trusted their children or their grandchildren to go with each other because they weren't familiar with the other family, if that makes sense. Joanne was thought of by her family as very caring and very motherly for an 11-year-old, which is probably the reason why she was allowed to take such a young child to the toilets on her own. So the Ratcliffe family rule for their children was that they were not allowed to go to the toilet during the breaks of each football quarter. Again, I don't know sports. They weren't allowed to go to the toilet during the breaks of each quarter, and they weren't allowed to go to the toilet during the last quarter. And I'm presuming that's because that's when it would be the most hectic and crowded and they would be the most likely to get lost. So that's my conclusion to it. But anyway, it was the third quarter, I believe, when Kirsty and Joanne went to the toilet for the second time. And it was approximately 3:45 p.m. in the afternoon, obviously PM. By this point, however, Kirsty and Joanne did not return from this toilet break. Upon realizing the girls had not returned, after about 10 minutes, the families decided it was time just to go look for them. At this point, I don't believe they were panicking, so Kirsty's mother stayed in their seats in case the girls returned, and Joanne's parents went to look for the two girls. After about 20 minutes, the families were really getting concerned. So Joanne's mother headed to the secretary's office to request that they make a PA over the football stadium about the two missing girls. Unfortunately, this request was denied and no PA was made because, according to the person there, they wouldn't have heard the PA anyway over the crowd of 50,000 roaring football fans, which I guess makes sense, but it wouldn't have hurt to try, would it, honestly? And so two young girls have now been missing for 20 minutes in a crowd of 50,000 people, and it seems that they have just disappeared without a trace. So over the next hour, the Ratcliffe family search every square inch of that football stadium for the two girls. And a PA is eventually made, but only after Les Ratcliffe got in touch with the secretary of the South Australian Cricket Association. The girls are reported missing to police at 5:12 p.m. that afternoon, and police immediately begin their own search for Joanne and Kirsty, but they are not able to locate the two girls. The information police gathered in their search for Kirsty and Joanne alarms both police and both the girls' families. 4 witnesses claim that they saw the girls in the 90 minutes after they went missing. According to all the witnesses, the girls appeared distressed and they were in the company of an unknown man. The assistant curator of the Oval, Ken Walling, saw the two girls actually leaving the Oval with a man that he said had a stoop to his walk, so like a sideways lean, I believe. Another witness claims they saw Joanne punching, thumping, kicking and screaming at this mystery man. He was a man in a hat, and he was carrying the younger girl, presumably Kirsty, under his arm. Another witness, a 13-year-old boy who was selling candy at Adelaide Oval, claims he saw a man with a younger girl under his right arm, and he was dragging an older girl with his left arm. He said the older girl appeared to be struggling and trying to save the younger girl. So it is actually assumed that 4-year-old Kirsty was grabbed first by this mystery man, and it's quite possible that Joanne, of course, being like the motherly, caring type she was, didn't just want to let this man take Kirsty, so she maybe followed him or did what he said thinking she would get Kirsty back. She didn't want to disappoint both families and lose Kirsty when she's been given this massive responsibility. So I think it can be concluded, and what makes sense to me is that there was only 4 witnesses, because everyone that did witness Kirsty and Joanne with this man would have just assumed that it was 2 young girls having a tantrum and their father was dragging them home. And I guess that wouldn't be something too unusual. Maybe the kids were getting too excited at the football and the father had had enough and had to put one under his arm and drag the other one home. And I mean, really, who, one, is going to, you know, interrupt a parent telling their children off? And 2, in a crowd of 50,000 people, who would think for 1 second he had abducted these children? Who would be that ballsy to abduct 2, not 1, but 2 children in broad daylight in a massive crowd with literally thousands of witnesses surrounding him? Yet only 4 witnesses came forward. And as I said, I assume that's because they just didn't stand out as far as being, you know, they didn't look like they were being abducted. They just looked like they were in trouble with a parent. The last sighting of the girls and the man was about 3 kilometres from the football field or oval at Port Road, the Barton, which is a short distance from the Adelaide train station. And this was around 5 p.m. It was thought that maybe the girls and the man caught a train to this location, but no witnesses saw them on the train, so this is just a theory, it can't be confirmed. At the time of their disappearances, Joanne was wearing a blouse, a white blouse and a cardigan, black jeans and white track shoes, while Kirsty was dressed in a white dress and a purple jumper. And the girls were not seen again after this last reported sighting. So of course, all of these 4 witnesses did give descriptions of the man that abducted Kirsty and Joanne, and they described him as being tall, gaunt looking, and a middle-aged man in his 30s or 40s. It's believed he was about 177 centimetres in height, which seems like a strangely accurate number to be guessing, but anyway. He was wearing a brown hat with a wide brim, a grey checkered sports coat and brown trousers. And this man also happens to strongly resemble the man that was last seen with the Beaumont children. In fact, the sketches of the Beaumont children's suspected abductor and Joanne and Kirsty's suspected abductor are, they're uncanny. They're actually uncanny. I'm going to put them on screen so you can see a comparison between the two, and I think you'll agree it's eerie and creepy. And of course the Beaumont children went missing in the exact same city just 7 years earlier, and that case too has never been solved. And just in case you are unaware of the Beaumont children case, it is 3 children that went missing, 3 siblings aged 9, 7 and 4. They went missing in 1966 off Glenelg Beach in South Australia, Adelaide, South Australia. They were last seen with an unknown man, and as I said, to this day they have never been found. So I'm going to go over the 2 main suspects police have in Joanne and Kirsty's case. The first being rapist and killer Arthur Stanley Brown, who abducted, raped and killed sisters Susan McKay, who was 5, and Judith McKay, who was 7, in Townsville, Queensland. This was in 1970, 3 years before Joanne and Kirsty were abducted. Brown is to this day, even though he's not alive, one of the prime suspects in the Beaumont children case. It's also believed he was in the area when Joanne and Kirsty were abducted, and he also strongly resembles the sketch of the man that took Kirsty and Joanne. Again, I'll put that up on the screen because it's eerily similar. The second suspect in Joanne and Kirsty's abduction was notorious South Australian pedophile and part-time butcher Stanley Arthur Hart. Not to be confused with Arthur Stanley Brown, who I just talked about. Hart had been interviewed by police previously but died in 1999, and to the best of my knowledge he is still a prime suspect in the Beaumont children case. And again, for comparison, the suspect sketch of the person that abducted Joanne and Kirsty next to Hart, and I think in this case it's even more of an eerie similarity between the two. I mean, I don't know how Hart can not be this person, but I digress. Let's go on and look at more evidence. The grandson of Hart and convicted pedophile Mark Marshall confessed in 2007 that his Papa Stan had taken a hat and a coat from his granddad's house to wear to the footy that day. So the man that abducted Joanne and Kirsty was seen wearing a hat, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, was wearing a hat quite common for that time period around the 70s? Because I feel like, at least for older men, it was still considered quite common. I'm not sure, let me know. So Marshall was 3 at the time of the girl's disappearance. And so Marshall pretty much named his grandfather a suspect in the abduction and potential murder of Kirsty and Joanne. And look, he's in jail. I'm not sure if he currently is, but at least he was in jail for being a pedophile, so I don't know how trustworthy he is, but regardless, he did name some places for police to look. He named Pekina Dam and Hart's Utina property as places of interest in Joanne and Kirsty's case. He also provided various hand-drawn maps in his confessions, and police did follow up on his statements. The Peking Dam in South Australia was searched in 2009, and this did actually result in them finding 2 barrels that were hidden in a sealed tunnel in the dam. The barrels were tested, but there was no evidence of human remains found in the barrels, and in late 2014, Hart's Utina, South Australia property was searched by 30 detectives and 2 deep wells were excavated. Again, nothing was found. However, a third party did uncover a blood-stained butcher's apron and pants at this Utina property, which allegedly belonged to Hart, but of course remembering that he was a butcher, so he's probably going to have an apron and pants, like butcher's apron and pants, that is stained with blood. These items were sent for testing, but I couldn't find any information at all pertaining to these results. So again, if you have any information on that, let me know in the comments. At least 2 articles I read did claim that bones were found at this property, wrapped in fabric, and that the heel of a child's shoe that was similar to the one that Joanne was wearing when she disappeared had been found there. However, I couldn't find really any reliable sources to back these facts up, so take them with a grain of salt. And I couldn't find any information as to what kind of bones these were, because again, he was a butcher, you kill animals, there could be bones. So, but possibly it's true, but really just nothing of importance came of it. And in 2012, police labelled Mark Marshall's confession, being Hart's grandson, who basically dobbed him in, a fantasy. Hart was registered at living in Parkside, South Australia when Joanne and Kirsty went missing. To the best of my knowledge, this property has not been searched. And just keep in mind with this case as well, it is 45 years old, so I have done my best to find the most accurate information possible. If I am a bit shaky on any details, I will tell you in this video. And once again, corrections or further information are not only welcomed but encouraged in the comments. So according to Hart's family, he rarely missed a North Adelaide match, so there was a very, very high chance that Hart was at the same footy match that the two girls were. So as recent as 2015, Hart was actually linked to an abandoned property in Prospect, South Australia that had a hidden underground bunker that had actually been filled in as well. The property, which was 8 kilometres from Adelaide's CBD, was revealed to be Hart's childhood home. However, it was also revealed that in 1973, the year that Kirsty and Joanne went missing, from March 1973, it was for about a year time period, he had unmonitored and unrestricted access to this home with the hidden bunker. And of course the bunker wasn't filled in at this time, but it was filled in a few years after Joanne and Kirsty went missing. So this begs the question that if Hart was the abductor, did he take the girls to this property in Prospect and keep him in this hidden bunker? Because no one else lived there. As I said, he had unrestricted and unmonitored access to this home for a whole year, the year both girls went missing. I don't think it's that far-fetched. And investigators actually believe the bunker was filled in around 1975, so 2 years after the girls went missing, which does beg the question, was Hart hiding anything? Police did raid this Prospect property in 2015, but again, I could not find any information anywhere that gave me the results of what was found at this Prospect home, just articles about the actual, the fact they were going to do the search. So once again, I do assume that they didn't find anything at this house. So remember how I said there was only 4 witnesses to Joanne and Kirsty's abduction? Yeah, there was actually a 5th that came forward, and they didn't come forward until 2013. So Prospect man Robert McMahon, who is or was 73, he's old basically at this point. He's in his 70s, and he came forward years after the fact, claiming he saw the 2 girls with Hart. He claimed he saw them at the Vine Street boarding house the day they were abducted. McMahon said that the man, simply known as Scotty, claimed the 2 girls were his grandchildren. However, he said he'd been parading the 2 girls around before basically ordering them into a white van at the back of the boarding house. McMahon claims he was so disturbed by the incident that happened that he actually drew a picture of Scotty, the 2 girls, the cream white van, and even wrote a letter outlining what he had seen that day. McMahon says on the day that he saw the girls, he was sitting in his room watching the footy when he heard a racket coming from the back of the house. He stated, "I went to check and there was one of the boarders coming in and he had 2 children with him. He had a little one under his right arm and the other was ahead of him. He walked them around in a circle in front of us, 4 or 5 men laughing and joking." He said the kids were his grandchildren, but when the older one went to speak, he told her to shut up and not to say anything. I can still see the taller girl now as she walked past me. It was all very weird. McMahon, who was 33 at the time, said he stood in the kitchen and watched Scotty throw the younger of the 2 girls into the cream white van and ordered the older girl to get in as well. McMahon stated he rang police the very next day when news of Joanne and Kirsty's abduction broke on the news. But police said they would get back to him as they had had hundreds of sightings or reported sightings of the girls. However, the police never did get back to him. He contacted the police again a week later to tell them what he had seen, and then he contacted them a year later because he had not been phoned back or really been given any attention by police, according to him, when he tried to report what he had seen. He said he then just gave up because he thought police just didn't care. He described Scotty as being in his early 40s with a broad Scottish accent. He was about 165 centimeters tall, with a grey receding hairline, and limped on his right side. And you may remember me mentioning the stoop that one of the witnesses from Adelaide Football Oval mentioned. Well, this does line up with that. It was also only revealed a decade after Joanne and Kirsty's disappearance that Hart was a child abuser. To date, more than 2,000 lines of inquiry have been followed by investigators on this case. It is presumed that both Joanne and Kirsty were abducted and murdered back in August of 1973. In the 18 months following Joanne's disappearance, the Ratcliffes left their front porch light on as a beacon of light for Joanne to follow home. So basically a symbol of her hopeful eventual return. This gesture inspired the missing persons advocacy group Leave a Light On, which is run by Joanne's sister Susie, who never had a chance to meet her older sister. The group encourages members of the public to leave a light on, any light on October the 21st each year, for the missing people of Australia. And Les Ratcliffe, who passed away in 1981, never stopped searching for his daughter Joanne. So Susie Ratcliffe, who I mentioned before, was born 14 months after her sister Joanne disappeared. And she's really continued on her parents' legacy of searching for her sister even today. In only this year of June 2018, Susie called for all long-term missing children's DNA to be retested, or for the DNA in the cases to be retested. She stated, with the advances in DNA technology, it's very possible that retesting will provide answers that families like mine have been waiting for years. And there is currently a $1 million reward for any information leading to solving this case. And Susie has stated that she will keep searching for her sister and do whatever it takes, as long as it takes.
I want to be able to lay my dad's tortured soul to rest. And I want to be able to look my mum in the face and say, Mum, we're bringing Sissy home.
So I'm just going to quickly run over a few theories in this case. The only theory I personally believe is that Joanne and Kirsty were abducted, whether that be by Hart, Brown, or someone else. I think someone, maybe as a crime of opportunity, someone saw a younger girl only in the company of an older girl, or maybe had been watching the family from a distance, saw them go to the toilet together once, and then saw them get up half an hour later and go to the toilet together again for a second time, and took their opportunity. He may have also thought that he could just take Kirsty, being 4 years old and young and vulnerable, and just brush Joanne off, or tell her a lie, or get rid of her somehow and just take one girl, but ended up having to abduct the two girls because, of course, Joanne fought back and tried to fight to save Kirsty, being the caring, motherly young girl that she was. And again, we can just only assume that happened, but by all accounts, it does seem that Joanne really was fighting to get Kirsty back. I really don't think the abductor would have gone out to abduct two girls, because I mean, that seems incredibly ballsy in a crowd of 50,000. But if this is the same person that abducted the Beaumont children, which I think is highly in the realms of possibility, then he abducted three children in broad daylight on a beach, and it was Australia Day. Heaps of people were around, so it's not like nobody would have witnessed it. So this guy was obviously had a lot of confidence in himself. But what's happened to Joanne and Kirsty and the Beaumont children since the day they were abducted is anyone's guess. As far as perpetrators, Arthur Stanley Brown certainly has the history, which would imply he would make a very good suspect. He has already abducted and murdered in the past young children, and it's quite possible he was in the area at the time. Stanley Arthur Hart, on the other hand, was also in the area, and he was most likely at the actual footy game that Joanne and Kirsty were at. Not only that, he had plenty of places to hide the girls and hide bodies for a period of time, including deep wells and hidden bunkers. And of course, he was a child abuser, but that was not known at the time. Some have theorized that Hart even kept Joanne and Kirsty in his bunker for a period of time, but there is really no proof on this. It's just a theory. And as I did say, the theory that the person that took the Beaumont children took Kirsty and Joanne. The crimes were incredibly similar. The description of the abductor by witnesses was almost identical, both in broad daylight, both with plenty of witnesses, both in Adelaide, both abductions of multiple young children. And these crimes, as I said, were only 7 years apart. And as a reminder, with all these cases, if you know anything at all, even the smallest detail, contact Crime Stoppers. I'll leave the information below. I did do my best to research this case as much as I could for a case that is 45 years old. And of course, all of my sources come from media resources online, so do take that into account. This case does remain open and unsolved. Thank you so much for listening to Joanne and Kirsty's story. If you did find this video interesting, please do consider liking, commenting and subscribing. And don't forget to hit the notification bell to see more of my true crime videos like these ones in the future. Thank you again. Have an amazing day and stay safe. Bye guys.